Gabriel was a chef who loved to help people without asking for anything in return. He could never say no to anyone, even when he knew they were taking advantage of his kindness. There was a cat that would sometimes appear at Gabriel's window, but it always ran away when he tried to approach it. One day, on his way back from work, Gabriel noticed the cat stuck in a tree. As he tried to rescue it, the cat fell and injured its leg. It tried to escape as usual, but it couldn't run due to the injury. Gabriel gently carried it, then took it to a nearby vet for a checkup and vaccinations. He brought the cat back home to feed it. He gave it some cat food he picked up on the way, and then cooked his own meal to eat. While eating, he heard a voice say, "Is he expecting me to eat this awful food?" Gabriel looked around, but saw no one. He thought he was being paranoid and returned to his seat. Then, he heard the voice again, "No matter how hungry I am not eating this. I need to find a way out." Startled, Gabriel stood up and searched the room again, finding no one. Puzzled, he picked up the cat, wondering if it was the source, but it simply meowed. He headed to the fridge for some water. Upon returning, Gabriel found the cat on the dining table eating his meal. Rather than getting angry, he smiled and went to the kitchen to make himself another meal. When he returned, he was shocked to see a naked, stunning young man with white hair sitting where the cat was moments before. Startled, Gabriel screamed, dropping his freshly prepared food and covering his eyes. The man muttered to himself, "Is he crazy?" before seeing his reflection through the window. He was the cat who had transformed into his human form. Surprised, he hopped down from the table and went to the window to see his reflection. "Well?" Still shielding his eyes, Gabriel asked, "Who are you?" With a smile, the man named Luke turned to face Gabriel and lowered his hand, saying, "I'm Luke, the cat you brought in." Gabriel, incredulous, asked, "How is that possible?" Luke then showed him the wounded leg as proof. Half believing and half skeptical, Gabriel said, "Could you cover up first? You can go to my room and borrow some clothes." Luke asked, "Can I shower in your bathroom first?" And Gabriel nodded. As Luke was in the shower, he smirked to himself, murmuring, "He really is the one." Spending almost 2 hours in the shower, he emerged and thanked Gabriel for the food and clothes, ready to leave. However, Gabriel halted him asking, "Can you at least tell me what just happened before you leave?" Luke turned to Gabriel and said, "Well, you do deserve an explanation, so I'll give you a short one. I was once fully human, but got cursed to eternal life and somehow turned into a cat. A fortune teller once told me I would meet a chef who would help me break the curse. I followed every chef I encountered, including you, to find out who that chef was. Now, I believe that chef is you, and I think the curse has been broken. So, thank you and goodbye." Luke turned and made his way to the door. Just as he opened it, Gabriel halted him once more. Luke turned back, slightly annoyed, and asked, "What is it now?" Gabriel pointed out, "Your ears and tail." Luke quickly checked and realized his tail had reappeared. He touched his head and felt his cat ears were back. Confused, he muttered, "What's going on?" Suddenly, he transformed back into a cat completely. Luke questioned himself, "Why is this happening?" Recalling how he initially transformed into a human, he remembered the food he had eaten. He urgently asked Gabriel for the remaining food, but Gabriel informed him that it had already been disposed of. Luke exclaimed, "Why would you dispose of it? At least you could have saved it for the stray cats and dogs outside." Gabriel explained, "I already fed them, and you pretty much finished everything. There wasn't much left." Luke asked, "Make me the same food again." Gabriel responded, "I'm sorry, but I used the last ingredient. I would have gone out to get more, but all the stores are closed now." Luke sighed in frustration. Gabriel then offered Luke to stay the night at his place, promising to buy the ingredients and cook the food for him the next day. He brought out a basket and placed a blanket and pillow inside to make it comfortable. Luke asked, "Don't tell me you expect me to sleep in that? Do I look like a cat?" Gabriel looked down at him, saying, "Ugh." Luke added, "Well, I am a cat for now, but I don't do cat things. Show me to your guest room." Gabriel explained he only had one room in his house, and Luke insisted on taking it. Agreeing, Gabriel fetched a blanket to sleep on the couch, allowing Luke to take the entire room for himself. The next day, Gabriel woke up early to prepare the food before heading to work. Luke hadn't explained why he wanted the same food, but Gabriel guessed it might help him turn back into a human. After work, when Gabriel returned home, he found Luke still in his cat form and asked, "Did it work?" Luke replied, "Does it look like it worked?" Luke then requested Gabriel to cook a variety of foods, hoping that one might work. Gabriel didn't refuse and prepared numerous different dishes. Luke consumed all the different foods, but remained in his cat form. Exhausted and realizing it wasn't the food, he sniffed around Gabriel, thinking it might be his scent, but it wasn't. Luke couldn't determine why he had briefly turned human, but he became convinced that Gabriel was indeed the chef the fortune teller spoke of. He resolved to stay with Gabriel until he found a way to break the curse. Luke informed Gabriel of his decision to remain, and Gabriel accepted without objection. On the weekend, Gabriel went out and purchased a cat litter box and some cat toys. When he brought them home, Luke expressed disdain, saying, "Those things can't be mine. I'm never using them." Gabriel simply responded, "You never know." One night, Luke noticed Gabriel experiencing discomfort from sleeping on the small couch. Reluctantly, he approached Gabriel, who was asleep, and contemplated whether to invite him to the room or not. Luke had always been indifferent to others, prioritizing only himself. He would pass by a dying person without a second thought. However, he found himself unable to ignore Gabriel's discomfort from sleeping on the couch. Unsure of how to wake Gabriel up, he climbed on top of him and brushed his tail against Gabriel's nose until he stirred awake. Luke told Gabriel to come sleep on the bed, then quickly left. Gabriel followed Luke and settled into the bed, with Luke cuddled up beside him. The next morning, Gabriel opened his eyes to find Luke, now in human form, naked beside him. Startled, Gabriel screamed and quickly covered his eyes, which woke Luke up. Unfazed by his transformation, Luke simply stretched and entered the bathroom, wearing a smirk. He indulged in a long bath and emerged with Gabriel's towel wrapped around his waist. Gabriel inquired, "Aren't you surprised you've turned back into your human form? Is it because we slept together last night?" Luke calmly responded, "I only transform into a cat for the first 10 days of every month. The rest of the time I'm human." Surprised, Gabriel asked, "But you turned human before." Luke explained, "That was unexpected. It had never happened before, but it confirmed to me that you're the chef I've been searching for." Gabriel then asked if Luke intended to stay with him now that he was human. He firmly replied, "I'm not leaving until we figure out how you'll help me break the curse. Do you have a problem with that?" Gabriel vigorously shook his head, expressing that he didn't have any issues with it. Luke retrieved clothes from Gabriel's wardrobe to wear and asked him to prepare breakfast before leaving the room. As he exited and noticed the cat litter box and toys, he demanded, "Get those things out of my sight," then seated himself at the dining table, awaiting his meal. Gabriel hastily prepared breakfast and then hurriedly got ready for work, realizing he was running late. Luke also went out to shop for clothes and various items he needed, as well as some things he simply wanted on a whim. Without realizing, he also picked up some gifts for Gabriel. When Gabriel returned, he was astonished to see the abundance of items Luke had bought. He asked Luke where he got the money to buy all those things, noticing that most of the clothes seemed to cost a fortune. Luke simply replied, "Do you know how long I have lived for?" Gabriel shook his head, and Luke raised 3 fingers. Gabriel guessed, 30 years, and Luke shook his head. Gabriel tried again, gasping, 300 years? Luke nodded. "I would be a fool to be broke after living for so long," he remarked. Gabriel, awestruck, commented, "You look like a teenager. I never would have guessed." Luke responded, "That's the only good thing that came with being cursed to live forever. Now, cook something for me to eat. I'm hungry." While Gabriel was busy in the kitchen, Luke discreetly placed the gift he had bought for him in his drawer. Later, when Gabriel returned to his room and discovered the gift, he came out excitedly and asked if Luke had given it to him, thanking him. However, Luke pretended as if he hadn't heard Gabriel. In the following days, Luke grew tired of being alone at home while Gabriel was at work, especially since there was no progress in finding a solution to break the curse. He decided to visit Gabriel's workplace to keep an eye on him. Gabriel worked as a chef in a small restaurant, and Luke already knew its location. Upon arriving, both girls and guys flocked into the restaurant, taking pictures of him. The manager quickly approached Luke and offered him a job as a model for the restaurant. All he had to do was to be present and he would get paid. Luke declined, stating that he didn't need money and wasn't interested. The manager politely invited him to reconsider in the future if he changed his mind. Gabriel remained unaware of Luke's presence at his workplace, as he was occupied in the kitchen. However, Luke could see Gabriel from where he was sitting and observed him until closing time. After the restaurant closed, Luke went to the kitchen to find Gabriel. He overheard Gabriel's coworkers asking him to do their tasks, including washing the dishes and cleaning the kitchen, as they had an emergency. Before, Luke had overheard Gabriel's coworkers discussing how they planned to exploit his naivety and kindness by having him do their work for them. Usually, Luke would mind his own business, but he decided to tell Gabriel what he had overheard. Despite being informed, Gabriel still agreed to help his coworkers. They half-heartedly thanked him, casting suspicious glances at Luke before leaving. Luke couldn't help but express his frustration, asking, "Are you foolish or just overly nice?" Gabriel responded, "Maybe I'm also cursed. I can never say no, but I find joy in helping others, even if I know they're just using me." Luke just sighed. Standing beside Gabriel, Luke waited as he washed the dishes and cleaned the kitchen. Suddenly, Luke leaned in, catching Gabriel off guard. Expecting a kiss, Gabriel tightly shut his eyes, but Luke just moved to his neck and sniffed it. When Luke pulled back, Gabriel asked if something was wrong. Luke replied nonchalantly, "I was just curious about something, it's fine." Now feeling hot, Gabriel hurriedly finished his tasks and left. As they left, Gabriel continued to help anyone he saw in need, while Luke followed him, growing increasingly annoyed. As they reached the street, Gabriel noticed a little kid running into the road, with a car speeding toward him. Without hesitation, Gabriel dashed into the street and embraced the child, prepared to shield him from the impact. However, the car screeched to a halt just in time, with the driver shouting at him. The child's mother rushed over and profusely thanked Gabriel. As Gabriel returned to Luke, Luke questioned, "Is this why you always get home late? Busy being a good Samaritan? What if you got hit by the car?" Gabriel responded earnestly, "I couldn't just ignore the kid. He would have been hit if I hadn't saved him." Luke shook his head and walked away, with Gabriel following behind. With the last ingredients in the fridge, Gabriel prepared dinner for both himself and Luke. Before they could start eating, Luke expressed his desire to have Gabriel's food instead. Without hesitation, Gabriel agreed to exchange meals with Luke, but Luke insisted on combining Gabriel's portion with his own, deeming his own portion too small. Gabriel willingly handed over his food to Luke, stating he could have it. Shocked, Luke questioned, "Are you serious? Are you really going to give me your food and go to bed hungry?" Gabriel remained silent, fidgeting with his fingers. Luke continued, "You're too kind for this world. You should learn to say no sometimes." With that, he returned Gabriel's food to him. Gabriel explained, "I feel happy whenever people say thank you to me, even if they don't mean it. Even if they don't say it, I just feel happy that I was able to help them." Luke retorted, "You're just being a people pleaser." Gabriel countered, "If you had ever helped someone, you would know the great feeling that comes with it." Gabriel pressed further, "Have you ever helped someone?" Luke went silent, and they both resumed eating in silence. Luke decided to accept the job offer at Gabriel's workplace, using the excuse that he wanted to observe Gabriel closely to understand how he could help him break the curse. However, deep down, he had another reason. He wanted to ensure that Gabriel's co-workers would no longer take advantage of him. He threatened them with his intimidating eyes, warning them to avoid Gabriel if they just want to use him. Coming back home with Gabriel was what frustrated Luke the most, because he would even help an ant cross the road. However, as time passed, Luke grew accustomed to Gabriel's kindness, and it even began to influence him as well. One day, he found himself catching a thief who had stolen an old woman's bag. As the woman sincerely thanked him and blessed him, Luke experienced a feeling he had never felt before. Just then, Gabriel approached him with a huge smile, asking how he felt when the old woman thanked him. Without replying, Luke walked away with a straight face. As it was time for Luke to transform into a cat again, he wouldn't be able to accompany Gabriel to work. Just then, a friend of Gabriel's asked him to look after his cat while he was away. Unable to refuse, Gabriel agreed. When Luke learned he would be living with a cat, he adamantly refused, expressing he disliked cats. Gabriel teased him, remarking, "You're a cat too," Luke retorted, "I'm just a temporary cat." Left at home with the cat while Gabriel went to work, Luke initially kept his distance, avoiding the animal. However, over time, the cat grew on him, and he found himself becoming fond of it. Though he didn't show it, Luke felt a twinge of sadness when the cat had to leave. It was the first time growing fond of anything. Gabriel opened his eyes in the morning to find Luke, once again in his human form, naked beside him on the bed. Startled, Gabriel screamed and covered his eyes. Luke, unfazed, remarked, "Why do you keep screaming? You should get used to this," before heading to the bathroom for his usual lengthy shower. In the following days, Luke continued to assist anyone he encountered in need, much like Gabriel, but he made sure not to allow people to take advantage of him. He only extended help to those genuinely in need and taught Gabriel how to say no when necessary, but that was impossible. Each time he helped someone and received genuine gratitude, Luke experienced that strange feeling. He told Gabriel that he finally understood why he was the one destined to help him break the curse. Luke began by recounting how he became cursed. He used to live in a small town where he was known as a loner, living as if he were the only person in the world and ignoring everything and everyone around him. He would pass by a dying person without a care and wouldn't even lend a hand to prevent a child from falling. He was the only person with a car in the town, and one day, a young mother knocked on his door, desperate for help to drive her and her sick baby to the hospital, as the nearest one was on the other side of town. Despite the pleas of the townspeople, who knew he wasn't inclined to help others, Luke callously shut the door in their faces and ignored them. Desperate to save her baby, the mother walked to the hospital despite her bleeding feet. It took her 2 days to reach the hospital, but by then, it was too late. The baby had already passed away. The doctors informed her that if she had arrived earlier, the baby could have been saved. Completely broken, the mother returned to the town and went straight to Luke's house. In tears, she placed a curse on him, decreeing that he would live forever to witness the death of his loved one and would endure endless sorrow and agony. Previously, Luke hadn't cared about the curse because he had no one he loved. He was alone in this world. After a serious car accident left him on the brink of death, he awoke to find himself transformed into a cat. It was this transformation that drove him to desperation to break the curse. He was annoyed at why she had to turn him into a cat too. He met a fortune teller who revealed that the only way to break the curse was to help those in need. Despite his efforts, Luke's attempts to break the curse by helping others proved futile. He met the fortune teller again, who pointed out that his motivations were selfish. He had only helped people to break the curse, not out of genuine kindness. The fortune teller revealed that Luke would meet a chef who would truly help him break the curse. Initially skeptical, Luke resigned himself to his fate. However, as he lived on and witnessed the passage of time, with people around him aging and passing away, he grew desperate once again to break the curse. He decided to look around for the chef who would help him break the curse, and after a long time, he found Gabriel. He came to the realization that Gabriel was the complete opposite of him. In this realization, Luke understood that the true curse was not the transformation into a cat or living for eternity, but the inability to help others. Gabriel, unsure of what to say, just hugged Luke, not blaming him for his past. Luke softened and became kinder over time, as he and Gabriel grew closer with each passing day. As they were eating cream-filled buns one morning, a smear of cream ended up on Gabriel's lips. Without hesitation, Luke used the tip of his tongue to lick the cream from Gabriel's lips. Gabriel sat frozen, his heart pounding wildly, while he held onto his bun, the cream dripping onto his shirt. Unfazed, Luke continued eating. He glanced at the dripping cream and asked, "Do you want me to lick that too?" Gabriel snapped out of his daze, surprised at Luke's nonchalant reaction to what he had done. As Gabriel stepped out the door of the house, Luke collapsed to the floor, thinking of what he did, wondering why he did that. When Gabriel returned home, he found Luke in the kitchen cooking. Gabriel asked what Luke was doing, and Luke replied, "I just felt like cooking today, since I was bored at home with nothing to do." Gabriel glanced at the food skeptically and remarked, "Are you sure you know what you're doing?" Luke countered, "Are you doubting my cooking skills?" He then scooped some soup, offering it to Gabriel to taste. As Gabriel pouted his lips and blew on the soup to cool it down, Luke became distracted, his gaze fixated on Gabriel's lips, replaying the scenes from the morning. Inadvertently, he touched Gabriel's mouth with the hot ladle and soup, burning his mouth. Luke quickly put the ladle down then, acting on impulse, he pulled Gabriel close by the neck and kissed him for a few seconds. After pulling back from the kiss, Gabriel asked in a weak voice, "Why is your mouth cold?" Luke also responded in a low tone, "I just ate ice. I thought it would help cool down the burn." Gabriel murmured, "I'll go freshen up," and quickly retreated to the room. That night, they both lay straight in bed, with a huge gap between them, even though they usually slept close together. The next morning, Luke woke up first, but remained in bed, watching Gabriel as he stirred. When Gabriel opened his eyes, their gazes met, holding each other's gaze for a moment. Luke broke the silence with a low, raspy voice, "Aren't you going to work today?" Gabriel replied softly, "It's Saturday." Luke responded, saying, "Oh." They exchanged another brief glance before Gabriel hurriedly got up and went to the bathroom. As Gabriel left, Luke released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The day slowly passed by with them sitting idle, unsure of what to do. Luke asked, "What do we usually do on weekends?" Gabriel shrugged, replying, "I never paid much attention to that." Luke suggested going shopping, but Gabriel replied, "I don't think there is more space in the room for that." Then, Gabriel suggested going to an amusement park, but Luke expressed he didn't want to go out anymore and that he wanted to do something at home. Gabriel asked what they could do, and with a smile, Luke went into the room, returning with facial treatment products, suggesting they have a spa day at home. He remarked that Gabriel always works and neglects his skin, asking him to lie down. As Luke massaged Gabriel's face with the oils, he noticed Gabriel starting to doze off. He asked Gabriel not to fall asleep, but Gabriel kept dozing off, saying that it was so relaxing that he couldn't help it. Luke tried blowing air on his face, but it only made Gabriel laugh, claiming it made him even sleepier. Luke then said, "Okay, then I'll bite your ears if you sleep." Gabriel pretended to be asleep, and Luke slowly approached his ear, his breath warm on Gabriel's neck before giving it a bite. Feeling ticklish, Gabriel giggled and lifted his head, inadvertently meeting Luke's face with his own. Luke leaned in towards Gabriel's lips, but just as they lightly touched, he pulled back. He then remarked, "You seem wide awake now." Suddenly, Gabriel choked on his saliva and started coughing, prompting him to quickly get up to grab some water. They both knew their growing feelings for each other, yet neither of them made an attempt to confess. There were moments where they craved for each other, but they held themselves back. One day at the restaurant, as Luke sat at his usual place, a couple started loudly arguing. Some staff members and the manager intervened to calm the situation and escort them out, but suddenly the man pulled out a knife. Gabriel emerged from the kitchen, and upon seeing the man with the knife, he immediately approached him, attempting to persuade him to drop it. Despite Luke's attempts to stop him, Gabriel ignored and continued forward. Luke followed him to make sure he doesn't do anything stupid. Gabriel somehow managed to calm the man down, but then the man's girlfriend called him crazy, which enraged once more. As he charged towards her, Luke, who was standing nearby, jumped in front of her, in attempt to calm the man down again. However, it became evident that the man was not going to calm down this time. A split second, the memory of the young mother's curse, telling Luke that he would witness the death of his loved one, flashed before his eyes. Without hesitation, Luke pushed Gabriel away, and just then, he found himself impaled by the man's knife. Gabriel's face drained of color as he rushed towards Luke, catching him just before he collapsed. Tears streamed down his face as he fumbled with his phone, trying to call for an ambulance with trembling hands, his vision blurred by tears. Luke squeezed his hand reassuringly as he said, "Don't worry, nothing is going to happen to me. You know I can't die." And just then, he lost consciousness. Just then, the police and ambulance arrived, and the couple responsible for the attack were arrested. Luke was swiftly rushed to the hospital. Luke still remained in a coma after 10 days, with Gabriel fervently praying for his recovery. The doctors informed Gabriel that Luke's injuries were severe, with the knife penetrating vital organs, and it would take time for him to awaken. Meanwhile, in his comatose state, Luke dreamt, seeing the young mother smiling at him. He believed it was the end of his life, until he heard Gabriel's voice, crying beside him. He slowly opened his eyes, and the moment Gabriel saw him, his cry intensified, asking him why he took so long to wake up. As the doctors checked on Luke and told him he was healing well, Gabriel's tears continued to flow. Luke took Gabriel's hand and sat him down beside him. He wiped away Gabriel's tears and asked, "Why are you still crying?" Sniffling, Gabriel hugged Luke tightly as he said, "You don't know how scared I was. Why did you jump in front of the knife?" Luke asked, "Who jumped in first? Are you brave or just silly? Who goes towards a dangerous man holding a knife?" Gabriel replied earnestly, "I didn't know he was actually going to hurt someone. I promise I won't do that next time." Luke asked, "There is a next time?" Gabriel shook his head vigorously and said, "No." Luke gently cupped Gabriel's face in his palm. "You look like you haven't slept in years," he remarked. "You should get some sleep." Gabriel shook his head vehemently, his arms tightening around Luke. "No, I want to stay with you." Despite the pain from his wound, Luke endured the hug, returning it as he nestled his face against Gabriel's neck. A few days later, Gabriel was discharged from the hospital. As they almost reached home, a passing man congratulated them, mentioning that they had finally broken the curse. Luke recognized the man as the fortune teller and immediately stopped him. Luke questioned the fortune teller about what he meant by he had broken the curse, expressing confusion as he still had a cat tail. Instead of fully transforming into a cat, this time only a tail had appeared. The fortune teller laughed and said, "Turning into a cat was a curse from someone else. You need to find out how to break that one too. But don't worry, you're already halfway there." Looking at Gabriel, Luke was surprised and tried to remember who else had cursed him, but he couldn't. The fortune teller had already disappeared before he could ask anything else. When they arrived home, Gabriel asked Luke to sit still, and Luke pulled Gabriel onto his lap. "Do you know what I wanted to do first when I opened my eyes?" Luke asked. Gabriel shook his head. "I wanted to kiss you and tell you that I love you," Luke confessed, his lips hovering close to Gabriel's. Gabriel responded, "I love you too. I thought I'd never get the chance to tell you." Luke stared at Gabriel's lips, then leaned in and kissed him passionately. Gabriel reciprocated, their kiss deepening as they intertwined, Gabriel positioning himself comfortably in Luke's lap and wrapping his arms around Luke's neck. Their breath grew heavy as they pressed closer, until there was no space left between them. Feeling a twinge of pain from his wound, Luke tried to pull away, but Gabriel pursued, his lips reluctant to part. After Luke winced a little in pain, Gabriel withdrew, apologizing with an embarrassed expression. Luke smiled at him, remarking, "I just realized how cute you are," then kissed Gabriel's cheek. Gabriel replied, "You also don't know how cute you are," and pecked Luke's lips. Luke cradled Gabriel's face, peppering it with a cascade of kisses. Gabriel also held Luke's face in his hands, showering him with tender kisses in return. Luke stopped worrying about curses and only focused on growing with Gabriel.